Welcome to the NewSpace India podcast, a bi-weekly talk show that brings you exclusive stories from people driving India's space activities. The NewSpace India podcast is pleased to announce our association with Dassault Systems, a global leader in providing businesses and people with collaborative virtual environments to imagine sustainable innovations. Dassault Systems solutions support startups, small and medium-scale enterprises, and original equipment manufacturers in developing disruptive solutions for space launchers and satellite propulsion. Hi, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of the NewSpace India podcast. We're very lucky to have here Jason Canagan, who is based in the US. And I and Jason have been around in Michael's Zoom calls, the Starbridge VC, and I know him for quite a long time in the industry. And especially the Cold Star project has several episodes that are very insightful to learn about the entire technology, the policy, the entrepreneurship, the Space Force, and everything else around as well. So, Jason, thank you so much for taking the time and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Narayan. I appreciate it. And I've enjoyed the heck out of getting to know you as well. You're one of the few people in the space industry who gets what a commercial company actually needs to be, and you've created that with SatSearch. So it's been fun to watch and talk to you about.
Great. So, Jason, as I know it, you come from experiences in various industries, and especially with a very strong focus on sales and getting people to focus on process and things like that. So would love to know, what then drove you to the space sector, and what did you think that is contrasting from the space industry with other industries?
Yeah, so I started out in the manufacturing area. I have an operations management background and eventually got into operational excellence. I'm a board member of the Operational Excellence Society, run by Joseph Paris. That was fine, except my first boss wanted me to be a sales guy. And I really resisted that, but as time went on, I discovered he was a good talent scout, and it's a role that suits me pretty well. And it does come back to that idea of process, like we talked about, getting things down into a repeatable series of steps and recording those steps so that people can understand them. And then the operational excellence part, it comes out of looking at them, right? Process improvement, right? Should we be doing these steps at all? Can we take something out? Can we add something in that would make it better? Most companies are kind of blinding, they got their blinders on and they're just walking along doing things the way they always did because this is the way we do it. And that is the worst. If you hear yourself or people in your organization saying, we've always done it this way, but we've always done it this way, then you have a problem. So, I've been doing process improvement. And in fact, I was a plant manager when I was 25. I'm 46 now, so I have 20 years of experience in that sort of thing. Also, I've been a sales trainer since I guess around 2010. My first role, I'm Canadian. My first role in the U.S. was senior consultant to a sales training firm. So it's always a good field to get back into. So when it comes to the space industry in area, and there's positives and negatives, right? Why did I get into it? I had this vision of myself running an asteroid mining company when I was a teenager. And so this is around 1990. And I made the mistake of telling some people, I was a kid, right? And they laughed. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to tell anybody else about that. And I kind of put it on the back burner for years. And then one day around 2014, 2015, I was looking at news articles about deep space industries and planetary resources. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's happening, right? We're doing this, right? And I had no discernment. I didn't know how close they were to doing this or how far away, but, it was in the news, it was happening. So I got the vice president of business development for planetary resources on a private call, did a half-hour, 45-minute interview with him and got a snapshot of what was going on and that they were trying to get out of the NASA grant system and create a real commercial-based business. And I think people need to understand in this industry what a commercial space business would look like, right? They're still glomming on to the Air Force or NASA or DOD or Defense Innovation Unit or whatever it happens to be, ESA, right? in your own country, right? Whatever space organization there is. And, oh, well, I'll invent something and I'll get grant money from it. Well, that's not a commercial business. Narayan, you know this. I know this, right? We need customers. We need to solve a problem for somebody who recognizes that it's a problem, agrees that it's a problem, and will pay money to solve it. And unfortunately, we've got a lot of engineering-minded space founders who are great engineers, and they decide, oh, I want to build this thing because it's a pet idea of mine. There is no customer for it, but then they go and try and shop it around to venture capitalists and grant funding agencies and say, will you pay me X amount of zillions of dollars to develop this idea? And that's not a commercial business. A commercial business has customers, it solves a problem, and it gets good at solving that problem for a profit. And we're going to be digging a little more into that in this show. So what I see standing out in the space industry on the positive side is that it has great camaraderie and enthusiasm, right? When we had the lockdowns happening in 2020 due to our global illness situation, that shall not be named, I immediately hosted 2 conferences, virtual conferences online, right? And it was a lot of fun. I got a ton of space speakers together, probably too many. and a lot of people were attracted to that sort of thing at the time, right? They didn't have Zoom fatigue or anything. But if I had gone into the injection molded plastics industry, I like to joke, the doors probably would have been slammed in my face, right? The company owners in a mature, almost ossified industry like that would not have been as friendly. They would have been more scared and concerned with protecting their intellectual property or their source of supply or customer lists or something like that, right? Whereas people in the space industry understand that space is difficult. It is challenging. People can die. And so there's this camaraderie and general underlying sense of enthusiasm that bubbles up that everybody who is in the space industry recognizes. Right. And of course, we've got our range of colorful personalities in the industry. Some are a little rough around the edges. Some are more refined and friendly. But overall, people tend to respect each other in this field for whatever it is, right? Whatever role they're coming in from, an engineering or sales or space law, regulatory, right? It's there's some respect there. The negative side of it is that there is not much business sense. Right? There's, hey, I want to build this thing and give me $200 million for it. There is, and even, or just, I want to invent this thing, and there's no thought of actually building a business or an exit strategy. Folks like Megan Crawford will give examples of venture capital funded firms that did have a successful exit. And it is, 100 plus over the last 10 years or something like that. It's a decent number. But it's not like they meant to do that, those founders, right? It's very rare, right? You get a Dan Faber or somebody who comes along who really understands cap tables, but that guy is one of a kind, right? He's a rarity. Most folks in the space industry are engineering minded and do not understand why a company would be funded and where that exit strategy is. And believe me, the venture capital firm has the exit strategy in mind, and they want it executed in 6, 8, 10 years, tops. So those are the pluses and minuses of being in the industry, and I love it. And so I'm going to break for another question there. Talk quite a bit.
Yeah, no worries. It was really, insightful in that sense. So you've done, hundreds of episodes, I would suppose, now with the Cold Star project. There's quite a lot of library of content that you kind of created, having conversations with, everybody from the top military brass in the US to some of the youngest startup entrepreneurs trying to build all of these things. I mean, what is why do you want to create this library of content for people out there, and what's the motivation behind?
Yeah. So the Cold Star project is Joseph Ferris and I joke about this a lot. It's inertly named, right? It could be anything, and it's protean, right? I can change it to whatever I want. And so I started out interviewing software as a service founders and agency founders to understand the challenges of scaling businesses, which I know a lot about. And you'll hear that word is almost overused, right? And it means different things to different people. Is it human resources? Is it systems? Is it advertising, right? And so you're going to stub your toe as you grow. And a guy like me and my organization, we know a lot about these challenges and can help you so that you don't hurt yourself as you grow. We identify what these issues are going to be beforehand before you run into them and handle them. So that's what it started out as. Then after that interview with Planetary Resources, I realized that I could be in space. And we didn't cover this yet, Narayan. I had imposter syndrome, full on imposter syndrome. Like 2016, Jason was like, I don't know. These guys, they got their Stanford engineering PhDs and whatnot, right? And they can run circles around me. And I really was in this mindset that somehow I had to compete with them, which is laughable to me now because I've worked, my head around that. But I was like, who am I to be going into the space industry? And so I kept talking every so often to somebody in the space industry and doing an episode here and there. And they would say, Jason, you belong in there because they need the business sense. You have, and the manufacturing sense. You have a lot to bring to the table, right? And so finally, I actually started to believe them and reach out to these folks. And so for anyone wanting to do something similar to this, my purpose is to build my network and sincerely build it, right? Like I want to add value to everybody that I talk to. I enjoy meeting people, and I've been told I'm a great interviewer. It must be something happening after 10 plus years of running shows, but still, it took a while to normalize that sense. Yesterday, I called up the Air Force Research Lab in New Mexico, talked to a captain who I'd spoken with before 6 months ago when I did an interview last. And it was very smooth, right? It wasn't, who are you? What do you do? Right? It was, oh, hey, Jason, yeah, let's hook this up, right? And get on the calendar to interview the director. And so that is the long-term benefit that I'm looking for, right, is to have that network. And the show, the Cold Star Project, is an excellent vehicle for door opening and getting that going. Now, say I want to find out about something, Narayan, right? I'll just go find a PhD, whether they're an academic or a business owner or a technical subject matter expert, and ask them to be a guest. And usually they're tickled pink that somebody asked them, right? And I try and find people, for the most part, I'd say 2/3 of my guests are people who are not on the circuit, right? I have to make a sale a lot of the time to convince somebody to be a guest who's very nervous, right? Peter Thorpe, who is a space illustrator, who I recently interviewed, and he's in my town. I had to make the sale with him to do an in-person, on-camera interview. He just had not been comfortable appearing on camera, right? And I had to work at that for, a little bit. And I think a lot of people would give up before they got to the end result that we want. So having this library of conversations, and these tend to be evergreen, right? They if we're talking about a specific technology, yeah, that might get a little stale or whatever, but that person and that insight onto that person, that's still going to be valid. You're going to see their manner. You're going to see what their interest is in, right? What subjects are they focusing on? They're not going to stop being interested in that, right? Even if they were to be running a business and then 2 years later have totally jumped out of that into something else, they're still going to have a fond interest or memory about what they did, right? And so I like to think that I've done a lot of the heavy lifting or the spade work for young people or whoever to come along and see, like, who is approachable here, right? Who doesn't ignore you or tell you to get lost or something? I get told no, right? Hey, do you want to be a guest on a show? I get told no. It's not that often, but it happens, and I get silence sometimes. But I've got a process, and I've learned how to run it. So developing that network is the beacon of why I host the show. It's been a great tool for outreach and connection. It has opened doors that I would have had a much more difficult time banging my head against the wall. I've actually done 2 episodes on another podcast about mistakes made and pluses about running your own podcast, good things and bad things, right? And why being relevant to your audience is important, and then what are some of the sort of bells and whistles you should put around your show to make it work. And you've done a great job with yours, Arian. It just kind of came out of the unexpected. Right? One day I looked and I'm like, oh, he's hosting his own show, but you've got all the goodies that belong there. So yeah, so that's the main reason. If you have a follow-up question, then I'd be happy to focus in on that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think this is one thing that is quite interesting, right? One of the things that I've not seen many people talk about in our industry is what is the time value as well as the cost of building your network, and how can you kind of optimize that in today's world. And at the same time, what is the cost per meeting that you want to take when you go to a conference or when you actually talk to a potential customer at the end. There's a lot of people who spend a lot of time and money, and they actually don't put both of them together to see what is the opportunity like at the end. Unfortunately, that's also I guess driven a lot by engineers trying to run businesses at the end without knowing how a business and the metrics of business at the end. And it's also the way people then come to the table as well, because you will know when somebody says I'm selling a thruster versus I'm selling a mobility solution to somebody, right? So one thing that you see, among most of the space companies as well, I mean, 90% of them is somebody coming and telling you, I'm building the brightest technology in the world of some fashion. I'm doing, edge computing. I'm building this camera, and I'm building, this fantastic new technology thruster. I'm building nuclear propulsion and, all of these other things. But they actually don't talk about what is the problem that they're solving, and how big is that problem, and how many people have that problem, and how many times can they sell that same solution to the same number of people at the end, right? So is this something unique to our industry is what I'm trying to understand, because I've never really worked in other industries at the end. So is this something that is prescriptive to the way people build solutions in our industry? Because you do need to have that, want to have that deep tech and space tech background while you still want to do business here.
Right. Yeah. A lot of venture capitalists have pointed out, kind of giggling to me, that we'll see that hockey stick graph, the curve of exponential growth put into a slide, and about the total addressable market in a pitch deck. And they'll tell the presenter, ask them, like, what is this doing in here? And the answers they get will be something around, well, in my college class, we were told to have this. That's not a good reason, folks. That's not what that is supposed to be doing there. Yeah, the cost of developing your network, that is an interesting thing, because in my case especially, I've seen it as non-scalable founder time. Right, I can't really delegate it. I could figure out ways to do it. I could have one of my guys, for example. I think Eric would be very good at hosting his own show, right? And he could do it. But then he would be developing those connections, and he would be developing that network, and I could leverage that, and it would be good, right? It's not a bad thing, but that doesn't really accomplish what I want to accomplish, right? Now, the key factor on my end is discernment. When I came into this industry, in like 2018, 2019, I had no discernment. I didn't know who was real from who wasn't, right? And so I'd run into a guy who would tell me I'm building this or that, and I took them at face value, right? And when they say I'm building this or that, what they actually mean is I have an engineering plan to build this or that. Not I have customers, I have funding, I have the components figured out, I have my supply chain figured out, I have inventory management and production figured out, I know where my facility is going to be, I know where I'm getting the parts from, where I'm going to store them, what the bill of materials is, what all these other things, right? And so quickly, within 6 months at the most, I'd say, I had that discernment, and I wouldn't allow people on my show anymore who were just wannabes or dreamers, right? Who had a technical idea but no actual business. So So that's the way I've sharpened my axe, basically, of breaking into these connections in the industry, is developing that discernment of who's real and who's not, and being able to come to that conclusion in asking just a few simple questions, right? And without embarrassing anybody. It's not that I don't want to talk to people who have ideas. It's just, what am I going to do with my non-scalable founder time, right? An hour spent by Jason is one of 8 or 10 or 12 that he has in a day. And it's like lettuce, right? It spoils. If I don't use it, it spoils. If I use it, it's used for that thing, whatever activity, and I can't get it back. I can't go, oops, at the end of the day, reset, right? let's go back to the beginning. So, and I do think, like what you guys did, what Kartik did, and what you guys did, going to one of the satellite shows in the United States a year or two ago, of booking a ton of meetings, 50, 60 meetings, right? If I remember the story correctly, ahead of time, and then just machine gun having them one after the other. That was brilliant, right? Rather than, oh, I think I'll just show up and maybe find out who I might encounter, and maybe we'll have some conversations, and who knows where they're going to go, whatever, right? I think now you might pre-qualify them a little better, right, or a little differently, and search for people with certain qualities, and book the high intensity meetings with those folks. But yeah, that is an issue. Is like, as a founder, you really need to make sure that you don't get stuck in meetings. And to be fair, in other industries, I have to worry about the same thing. I've been working with an agency that's doing very well financially, but they had team huddles every darn day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? It was half an hour of mostly chit-chatting, and you get 9 or 10 people in a Zoom call or a Google Team Hangout or something like that, right? And people feel like, I felt as a participant, I felt that I had to say something. Right? I had to share something, and like every day, and then I'm racking my brain, like, what am I going to talk about today? How is today different from yesterday, right? Maybe you've got something that you kick the can down the road, and you've got something real to announce. But so I got them to stop doing that. They're doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and we'll probably back off even more. We don't have to have as many meetings as we think we do. And I've watched friends who are also founders get trapped in running their own businesses and having internal meetings that suck up all their day. And then some people can handle that. I've got an operations vice president I know who can sit there on Zoom meeting and line them up and have them one after the other from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m, and he's cool as a cucumber, and he's still there, right? Focused. I can't do that. I have 4 meetings and I'm done, right? My energy is out, and I'm not an introvert, but damn, I just can't do it, right? So as a founder, you really have to be cognizant of where you're spending your time and energy. And if you're not, I recommend you just go to your calendar and start recording for 2 weeks every activity that's 15 minutes or more, and then review it after the 2 weeks. Where did I spend my time? And your jaw will probably drop, and you're, oh my gosh, right? And you can do all kinds of things with this. You can batch similar tasks to organize them to get them out faster. So all your writing at one time, all your phone calls at one time, that kind of thing. Or you can eliminate certain things, right? We tend to get what we accept, Narayan, right? So if I accept walking down the street and getting punched in the face and mugged every day, that's probably what's going to happen, right? And people don't, you can laugh, but people spend their time this way. Right? They allow themselves to get mugged every day in their calendar and have their time robbed from them. And they just go, well, this is the way it is. No, it's not. You don't have to accept that. You can put a cap on the number of hours. I do, right? I want like 2 hours a day of meetings, tops, right? And in my scheduling calendar, there are limits. I will not do these meetings. You're going to have to book it next week or something like that, right? And life is politics. Everything is personal. There are always exceptions, right? If you come along and say, Jason, I need to talk to you, I'm going to find time for Narayan Prasad, right? He's going to fit into the calendar somewhere. But, other folks, we're going to get screened. Sorry. I have to protect my time and my energy and make sure that what I'm doing with my non-scalable founder time is useful, right? And gets us into that network situation, which makes life so much easier.
Yeah, one of the things here, that I wanted to touch upon is the way companies are kept alive, even though they have to be dead in the industry. So the reason why I say that is because, when technology is pushed, when somebody comes and says, "Oh, I'm building whatever nuclear fueled camera that's gonna see like your bathroom, and then it'll even see the cells on your body at the end from space." Somebody in the government, or in the military, or somebody will say, "Oh, I'm interested in that technology," right? And I think a lot of the technology around the world, especially in the US and other places, are funded this way, where somebody is kind of going and creating a new piece of technology and shopping that technology as a solution, and people are excited because it's not really commercial problems a lot of the people are then solving. It's military person thinking, "Oh, this is kind of new technology, and maybe it's interesting for us to do something with this, and it'll help us in some program or something like that," right? So it's not really attached to a business that is then attached to consumer at the end in some form or the other, and it's a very different cycle, and it becomes a very self-serving thing where taxpayer money is then rotated and recycled among companies who are then peddling this to then shop around to the VC saying, "Oh, the Space Force is then our customer here, and you should be funding all of this, and Raytheon is going to acquire us eventually." And so this is the usual trends in this circuit, right? In all of this, but you'll never see, I don't know, a chips manufacturer like Pepsi or somebody and come and say, "Oh, we want to fund a new technology of generating chips because our military is going to eat better chips at the end of the day," or something vague like that. When it comes to normal technology, people are just looking at, okay, can this reduce the production of chips by like 20% or 30%? Do I save more oil? Do I save more resources? Do I, get a better lead time? Do I get a better flavor to my consumer? These are the kind of the questions that, people then kind of ask at the end. It's not about, "Oh, we are going to be fascinating about this particular technology at the end." So for me, I think, unfortunately, especially because there is a large amount of government funding available in the process, in our industry especially, that keeps companies alive, which shouldn't. I don't know. What do you think about this?
Yeah, this is okay. So government is not business, and I don't think the government should be run like a business. I lean more libertarian. I do believe in taking care of other people. So I'm walking contradiction in a lot of sense. I'm a fan of the von Mises Institute and the Austrian model of economics, and that. And this is after having 3 years of education in economics up to intermediate macroeconomic theory. So I know what I'm talking about, people. Economics is a priesthood. It is not a science, an exact science. Let's begin with that. So government and business should not be run the same way. I think people do need to recognize that if you're in government or a military and you've got that funding, it does come from the taxpayer. And so, yeah, let's invest it wisely. Now, you've touched on a number of things in the comments that you just made. Particularly standing out to me is the inventor. Is jumping up to venture capitalists and saying, "Well, we've got AFWorks, or we've got DoD as a customer, DARPA, or something like that." Now we've made it, right? Give us money. And now, I trust, Narayan, that especially space industry venture capitalists will have their heads screwed on straight. A Michael Mealing is not going to rush into that deal, right? He's going to smile, lean back a little bit, and ask more questions, and very quickly discover that they don't have a message to market fit, and the total addressable market is quite low, right? And he'll pass. So I don't think that there's too much danger in getting into trouble in that area. One observation I'd like to make is what the military has got going on here. This situation is a lot like television shows and scripts for episodes. Particularly if we were to hop back to 1989 or something like that, and it's Star Trek: The Next Generation or something. That's something our viewers and listeners ought to know about. Those folks at the studio would get solicited scripts for episodes from anybody, right? I could write, so you could write something and send it in, and they would just buy some, right, for the concept. Maybe it's not even that well put together or written, but they like the concept, and they're like, well, let's put these on into the safe, basically into the back burner, right? And boom, there's a writer's strike. And there was at the time, right? Oh, well, let's go into the safe and pull out some of these scripts because we can't hire a writer through the system. And we have to hire a writer through the system. So let's see what we got here. And they might mash a couple of these ideas together. They might take one of these out and polish it up as best as they can, even though they're not the professional writers, right? Because they have to produce something. And so I believe there's a parallel here with the military where they will look and go, yeah, that is an interesting idea. We don't need it right now, right? We're not going to produce this script into an episode right now. We're not going to take your idea and turn it into a full-fledged thing right now. But let's bring it in-house. Let's take ownership of it, right? Let's put our stamp of ownership on the idea and compensate you in some way. And keep it on the back burner just in case, right? And so, like, why wouldn't they do that, right? There is the situation, though, where discernment and filtering. What are the qualities or criteria by which the military will choose that thing to take over, right, or bring in house? That's where that comes to be really important. So I'm not too concerned about. Poor ignorant venture capitalists jumping into funding something just because military or DARPA or whoever has picked it up. I think they've got better calculation skills than that and can figure out, gee, the total addressable market here is small. And this happens to me every day, Narian, where I get people throwing their pitch decks at me over email or LinkedIn Messenger, and will you have a look at it? And I just don't do it anymore. I did it for the first year for free, and now if they want my help, they're going to have to pay for it because, again, it sucks up that non-scalable founder time. And I've seen so many of these darn things, Narian, that are just technical, right? 15-page technical document about how cool their thing is. Well, yeah, but who's your customer? Where are your customer testimonials? Where, even if you don't have buyers, where are people who want the solution that you're providing? Writing a quote, right? That should be on one of these slides. I had this terrible problem, and Narian came along with this really cool system. And as soon as he's able to provide it, this is good enough for me, folks. As soon as he's able to provide it, in a repeatable, good, functional way, I'll buy it. And I'll pay X amount of dollars for it. All right. Now we have something, right? We've got something there. So that is the kind of thing that founders ought to be focusing on, not, hey, look at the cool whiz-bang part of this thing.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. In all your experience so far, talking to all of these hundreds of people with all of these other entrepreneurs as well, you have a sense of what are the most underappreciated ideas when it comes to executing on early stage ventures?
Yeah, the key thing is the concentration, too much concentration on the engineering, right? This the cool part of the solution. And I've made no secret of what I'm about to say next year. I have shared the heck out of this. I've got a course that's a 7-hour workshop that goes into this. Every commercial business, whether you're selling lemonade on a stand at the side of the road or running a space industry firm, you need these systems. You need lead generation, right? People need to come from somewhere to see your idea. You need qualification as a system, that is filtering for people who are a fit from people who are not a fit. Okay, and I can get into detail in the course in that about exactly how you do that and what you filter for in that qualification system. You need a closing or conversion system to turn some of those qualified prospective customers into buyers. Help them become buyers. How do you do that? Right. And this needs to repeat over and over again. And many of the businesses, including my own from time to time, I've run many businesses, I've forgotten this and not had my lead gen qualification and conversion processes running along. Right? I get too concerned with the fulfillment side of things, right? Look at the cool stuff we're going to do. And I don't have that steady churning stream of potential customers showing up and appearing in front of me because I don't understand my distribution channel or what platform I should be on, how these people are going to find out about me. So that's one major thing. Too much concentration on engineering, not enough on these systems of getting a consistent flow of potential deals coming your way. Fulfillment also, it's like, great, you engineered the solution. Great. But that is not the same thing as delivering it over and over and over and over again. Consistently, great quality, great delivery, right? Doing what you said in the time frame you said you'll do it, right? Supply chain, inventory management, hiring, employees on the production floor, scheduling, right? Productivity. And finally, I think this is a thing, Narayan, that most people never encounter because they don't get their businesses off the ground. Remember, if we go look at the Valley of Death image from Vern Harnish's Scaling Up, most businesses never get over $1 million a year, right? They never become $1 million valuation business, right? Increasing cash flow is just as much a death and killer as no cash flow. And a lot of broke folks are going to be shaking their heads going, what do you mean? Jason Kanigan is telling you more money is not going to solve your problem if you've got a bad business. All it's doing is increasing the speed at which you kill yourself, right? If I've got a restaurant and I'm churning out food, right? Even if I have a lot of customers, if I don't understand my product costing, how much does it cost for me to serve this plate of food? And I undercharge, with every plate of food served, I am getting further into debt. Right? If it costs me $12 to produce this plate and I'm selling it for $10 and my restaurant is busy and I think I'm a success, every plate of food I'm serving drives me $2 into the poorhouse. And so many businesses are in this situation. I was a credit manager for 4 years, Narayan, for a national electrical wholesaler. I collected $2 million a month. I know a hell of a lot about risk, getting paid, talking to people about this very touchy subject of money, and understanding that just because their revenue increased doesn't mean that they're doing better. They could be driving themselves into the ground. And so you got to watch for these things.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Unfortunately, this is not very well discussed or even very well debated in our industry, in all of these sense. And I guess it's also the role of who does this, because it's not a part of a VC to coach people to think about their business in this fashion. Probably the accelerators are built in a way where they just want founders to get more money from VC so that they can increase the value of their own equity as an accelerator. And so there's a very cultural thing in all of this. But on this aspect as well, do you think that there's distinct different ways of doing business in different cultures in the space industry so far? Or I know that the American way of doing business is very different from the European way as well. So normally, once something is very successful in America, that's when Europeans think that's an idea that they can try after. So I mean, this is like the the whole SpaceX reusability and many other aspects as well. There's, I mean, of course, some innovation that happens in Europe where they're leaders in that as well, but that's kind of quite rare as well. So is this something cultural in different systems, but how much of those cultural aspects affect the way early stage entrepreneurs think?
Yeah, well, every business class will show and tell you that different cultures have different ways of doing business, right? So we can't ignore that, right? How much bribery, frankly, is involved, right? In certain cultures, that's much more acceptable and even expected, right? There are space companies in Africa. We know this, right? At great launch sites, economies ready for infrastructure investment and all the goodies that will bring. How much graft is in those situations, right? I don't know. So this is an area that I'm probably weakest on, Narayan. I'll admit. I'll make the damning admission. I know the North American market really well. I know a little bit about the European market, but the Far East in that, I don't know a whole lot about. Right? I've had a few guests on. I really try, right, to learn about it. I'm eager to learn about it, but it's a different world. The folks who picked up a big share of OneWeb, for example, that satellite constellation with the British government, I don't know anything about them, right? So it's a big world out there. In some ways, we'll say it's a small world, but there's a lot going on, and I'm not a full-time journalist, right? A lot of people seem to think I'm a journalist. No, I'm a business owner. I have businesses to run and insights to help provide for my clients and that, right? So I can't be everywhere and know everything, but certainly there's cultural differences, and they do have a strong impact on how the businesses are going to be carried out. And it's probably a good idea if you're going to do business with another culture, folks from another culture, take the course, right? Go find a course on like what are those differences and what can I expect here. Maybe it'll be a little outdated. Maybe it'll even be wrong in some cases, but at least your radar will be on and you'll be thinking, okay, they are not going to approach this conversation in a carbon copy way of the way I do, right? And I think for the Cold Star Project, my show, that's a major driving factor for me. I want to find out about you, my guest, right? The individual, right? I want to find out what is Narayan about? What is he like, right? I know from having interacted with you, you're a very generous person. You keep your cards close to your chest a lot of the time, but with your friends, you're very helpful, right? You've just given me things on occasion, which I'm very appreciative for, right? I haven't forgotten about. And you've learned very quickly what works and what doesn't in business, right? With Sat Search and the evolution of what's a good customer for Sat Search, right? You are not doing things the way another quote unquote directory type or matchmaking firm might operate, and it's gotten you much better results. In some cases, doing the opposite of what the herd is doing is probably the best idea. So just finding out like and approaching these things with the open mind of like, all right, it's not going to, their approach is not going to be my approach, and I need to be aware of what that's going to be. If I was for some reason to talk to a Chinese firm, China's been punched in the face for 200 years, right? And I have a very strong empathy for that, right? If I was punched in the face for 200 plus years and I got back up and was able to do something, I might want to walk around with my fists in the air too, right? And it's understandable. Like, I don't want them to do that, and I hope that we all evolve beyond that quite soon. I want to avoid potential conflicts coming up between nations, and geopolitics is very important to me. But I can understand where they're coming from, and I'm going to be watching for that, right? There's a bit of ego in there, and protection of ego in that, and they may not even be consciously aware of that, the folks on the other side of the table in that conversation. So there is a sales trainer I like named Jim Padilla, and I've been on his show, and he's been a guest on mine, and he talks about getting onto the bench with your negotiation partner, right, or your potential customer, and you're sitting on the bench. So instead of being across the table from each other, you're both sitting and facing the same direction. And as much as possible, getting into that mindset. So I think people would be well advised to go into discussions and look at how is business being done in these different areas of the world with that kind of mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of interesting insight, and a lot of the things that you kind of mentioned overall, I guess, people should really listen to, because I also come from a typical, engineering background at the end, and it's very easy to like go into a corner of thinking about technology a lot, and I also have to, then have to pull myself to know what are people willing to pay to get the solution out of me at the end. And that's something that needs a lot of conscious effort by engineers, especially, to then get out and really clear your head about whatever you're trying to build, and then look at what are people then willing to pay for that solution at the end. And in fact, one thing that's really worked well for us, after especially having iterated as quickly as possible as we could at SatSearch as well, is having to tell somebody that something's already built and asking them the price for it. So this is something that, we've kind of done consistently, where I just tell people that, assume that that solution is kind of built by us, and try to find out what the price are they, willing to pay for it, and how much of that is repeatable, and how consistently can we repeat it. What is the distribution cost of it? What is the customer acquisition cost for it? What's the lifetime value of this particular customer for us? And, then look at, is this the same way that we could sell into China or Japan or Korea or the US and Europe? And, that's one thing that we've kind of learned, where if we can have that model kind of very well fleshed out and replicated, regardless of the culture, regardless of everything. Of course, the only thing that might differ is price points, depending on, what their people are selling at the end, and, how willing are people to then provide exchange rates for the service that you want to provide at the end. This is something I guess works very well in software environments, right? Because for us, this is the same thing that we do consistently with every supplier. It maybe doesn't really work very well in the hardware environment so well at the end. So,
well, I'll push back on that. I think it does. And thank you for bringing up cost of customer acquisition and lifetime customer value, and that CAC and LTV are very important metrics for any business. And you see engineering-minded space folks rushing into business without looking at them at all. In a manufacturing sense, what you're able to do is before you make anything, folks listening, talking to you, before you make anything or engineer a beautiful solution that you find out nobody wants, which happens all over the place in every industry, not just space. Software people do it all the time, rush out and create a solution to a problem that nobody said they wanted or will pay for. Go and ask people, monetize the problem, right? How much does it cost for you not to solve this problem, Mr. Potential Customer or Ms. Potential Customer, right? If you leave it alone, what's that going to multiply to over several years? Is that a significant amount for you? Do you want this solved, right? Okay, how much would you pay to solve it? And I like to charge 10, 15, 20% of the size of the problem as my solution. I've found 10% of the size of the problem is a very good number for people to automatically say, well, that's a no-brainer. Yes. Then I take that number. All right, it's a $1 million problem. They'll spend $100,000 to fix it. What can I make for $100,000, right? Or how many customers can I get over a year or whatever for this? Okay, 100,000 times X, right? I can get 5 customers for it. Okay, 500,000. Okay, what can I make for this number? And then cutting off some for my margins or profit or whatever, right? That I want to keep at the end. Or maybe I just want to break even, and my point is to capture more market share and get customers. What can I make with that budget? And then go and engineer the solution and see, okay, it's like, Narayan, I want a car. Well, great. How long is a piece of string, right? Do I want the Yugo? Do I want the Volkswagen Beetle? Do I want the Cadillac? Do I want the Maserati? Do I want the BMW, right? Do I want the Rolls Royce, with the layered front panel with 400 pieces of wood or something like that, right? Carefully custom glued together, right? What do you want, right? And what can I provide? So there's always a sort of a duct tape and spit solution, I like to joke about it, at the bottom end, where you can make this thing and then prove the market and then improve on it later, right? We talk about minimum viable products. Here's this in action. But again, what do most space engineers do? Sit at home, create some beautiful crystalline solution, right? That shines in the sunlight. It looks very nice, but they can't sell it, right? And they haven't even thought about selling it. They just think people are going to fall on their butts and be bowled over by the beauty of this, the elegance of this solution to a problem that they don't even recognize exists. and pay for it. No, it's not going to happen. Go out and confirm, right? Every founder is delusional, including you and me, Narayan. Every founder, right? Delusional. Go out there and prove yourself right or wrong by talking to potential customers, getting them to tell you whether this is a serious problem in their mind or not, because you are not your customer. And then what would they pay to solve the problem, and then go engineer in that budget. What can I make, right? And maybe you'll find you can't, right? Maybe you'll find it's impossible, and then you've got some issues, right? Then maybe it's time to go to government to smooth out the risk, like an Andy Aldrin would want me to do, right? Maybe it's time to go back to the customer base and say, look, I can't solve it for this, but I can solve it for double that. Here's my actual solution. I thought, what do you think about that? Right? And they'll hum and haw and give you an answer. And we'll find out the truth. So, yeah, I think that's a good spot to end. I could go into this for 7 or 8 hours, but and I have in the workshop you can get off of the coldstartech.com website.
Right, and one of the things that I do want to bring up here is your website and the blog, salestactics.org. I've actually enjoyed reading some of the posts that you've written there, and it's really interesting always because you kind of learn quite a lot. So I really appreciate that resource as well.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, because I don't connect that to the space industry very often, right? I'll occasionally post something on LinkedIn or Twitter or something like that. But yeah, I have a sales and marketing blog that's been up since 2014. So what is that, 7 years now? How many people have held a blog up for 7 years now, Andy, that right? Most people can't do it. Trump abandoned his after 2 or 3 months, right? I remember reading an article about that and going, you got to stick to things, right? And yeah, an article a month or more for 7 years there. So thanks for pointing that out. That's salestactics.org for those who missed it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And, why I wanted to bring this up is, we did discuss a lot of the problems that, come up when you think about how do you approach, selling technology-based products at the end. If you would have to have a prescription where people would, want to start, I mean, this is my final question to you. Where do you think the people who, let's say they are founders who are all engineers and they don't want to bring in anybody with business backgrounds into the company just because they don't like it. There's a bunch of introverts who just want to be doing, engineering things, and somebody figures out that I want to do sales now, right? Let's assume this scenario here at the end. And if that is the case, what would be your prescription on where should somebody then start, and how would you then, advise them to go through this journey of figuring out the first check?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so very much what I've been talking about. I'll add, first of all, get the book Business Model Generation. It's a very good book. And I don't mean just as like the content in it. I mean, the way the book is put together is a very good book. And it tells you everything that you ought to be doing and gives you multiple perspectives on how you could make money with your idea. Business Model Generation. It's like a landscape format book, not a portrait one. So it's wider than it is tall. Getting out there and getting into the head of your customer, right? And discovering what their point of view is first, right? You are not your customer. The things, and I've been a copywriter, a person who writes advertising for other businesses for 25 years or more now. And I spent the first 10 years learning that lesson. Okay. The things that I valued and thought were important about a product or a service were not what other people valued. And that was a hard lesson to learn. You are not your customer. And so it's very important to get out there and talk to them. By all means, be the engineer. I know you love engineering. I know you love it. I'm not telling you to not be you, right? But carry that kernel of knowledge, of engineering insight and desire down the road a little bit. Don't bust out your drafting table and get into CAD and start plugging things together just yet, right? Go out there and find out what does your customer, your potential customer, believe to be the truth about this particular problem, right? Is it serious for them? Now, folks, a serious problem can be, I'm hungry and I want lunch. Boy, when I'm hungry and I want food, that's vitally important to me, and I will pay, right? And there are options that I don't know exist, right? If some private chef was to come along and say, Jason, I want to help you. I'll charge X amount a day for me to make you personal food. There is a number at which I would instantly say yes, right? And it's probably higher than some people would think, right? Because I already know the value. But I'm not willing to go out and do the search for a personal chef right now. I actually have a butcher, for example, who makes custom patties for me and things like that. I buy 3 months at a time, put them in the freezer, and then now I don't need to worry about what to eat. I'll just eat something out of that, right? I'll go buy seafood to mix in with there. So I'm not eating the same thing every day. But, how are they solving the problem now? Or why haven't they solved the problem before? Or what have they tried and failed at solving the problem with? Do they believe that anything can solve the problem? There's people who'll be like, nope, we've tried these 8 things and nothing will work. Okay, that's valuable to me, but I'm not going to try and turn that person into a customer. I'm going to learn from their negativity because that's going to help me with positioning and my marketing and message to market, right? But I'm not going to try and turn that person into a customer. Stop trying to turn everybody into a buyer too. And realizing, I guess very quickly you would realize in going around and talking to potential customers that people don't value or recognize this solution or the beauty or importance of the solution the way you do. Right? They're just going to be like, I don't care, right? A lot of the time. And your job is to dig and find out, are there people who care? Is it 2 out of 10 or something like that? That's a market. That's a niche, right? And so then I've got to start doing marketing that helps those people raise their hands and say, yes, I'm one of the 2 of 10. I'm over here, right? So getting out there and actually talking to your target market and curing your delusion, right? Does this problem exist out there or not? Does it already exist? Are there people out there who already agree that this is a problem? Or is it one I have to educate them about and make them go, oh, which is not necessarily bad either. It's slower, but you may capture the market pretty easily with something like that because you're the only person pushing that message out there, right? Like, hey, you've got a problem over here. So yeah, and then going back and following your love of engineering and designing a solution that elegantly fits into the budget of what they're willing to spend to solve that problem.
All right, Jason, we've spoken for an hour and it's been really kind of super insightful as always. At the end, I would recommend any of the listeners to go check out the Cold Star project on YouTube and listen to the very many episodes with entrepreneurs, investors, everybody under the sun at this point of time in the space industry. And of course, Jason, if somebody wants to reach out to you, what is the best way?
Probably through LinkedIn and connecting with me, sending me a message and that. You can go to the Cold Star Tech website and there's some contact stuff in there. But I'll be a little more friendly through LinkedIn. I had a guy book something just from the website without ever talking to me, and I messaged him in the middle of the night. I'm like, "What is this? Are you trying to pitch me something?" And just breaking into my schedule, and he realized he'd overstepped a little bit. So yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. Be a little chatty. Let me know, what's going on and what you're about. But yeah, and the Cold Star project is on YouTube. It's also available as an audio on every major platform, from Amazon Music through Spotify and 100 other typical places.
Right. So thank you again, Jason, for taking the time, and hope to have you in one of the other episodes that will be coming out next year possibly as a follow up to all of this. Thanks again.
Right. Thank you. It's been a lot of fun, and our positions could easily be switched. And you've been a guest on my show. I encourage people to listen to that as well.